Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Marta Candeias. I am the Portuguese NMBP National Contact Point for Horizon 2020, and I am part of the NMP in CP European Network, NMP team, funded by the European Commission. This is my colleague, Sofia Azevedo.
Good afternoon.
And we are here today with us two other NMP NCPs, one from Latvia and one from Croatia, doing a staff exchange, another activity of this project. In the frame of the activities developed under this European project, today we are organizing another virtual event for clients, this one about testbed call. We will have two speakers today, Hélène Craillet, Head of Unit Advanced Materials and Nanotechnologies, Directorate for Industrial Technologies, DG RTD, who will present the main characteristics of testbeds and domains in the work program. She will join us in a minute. And Stefano Carosio, Managing Director, Unismart Padova Enterprise, who will do a presentation about enabling access of SMEs to pilot lines, the Unismart model and its involvement within Horizon 2020 open pilot testbeds. Hi, Stefano.
Hello.
First of all, let us thank you for your availability to share with us information on this subject. We will do a little change in the agenda. We'll have the two presentations beforehand and then the discussion with the two speakers together. In the discussion, we will begin with questions from the registration form, and afterwards we will take some questions from the chat tool. So please feel free to put any question that may arise during the presentations. As usual, this event will be recorded and, along with the presentation and the answers, will be published on the project's website. So, let us start our event. Stefano, the floor is yours. You may start, please.
Thank you very much, Marta, Sofia, and all the NMP team. What I'm going to present you is the company I'm working for and its business model, which is particularly in line with the Open Innovation Testbed Scheme. So if Sofia can help me with the slides, I will be straight on that. Maybe if you can go to the next slide. I mean, just to give you an idea, Unismart Padova Enterprise is a commercial for-profit company fully owned by the University of Padova, which is a large university in Italy, the second oldest after Bologna, with about 3,000 researchers, 32 departments covering technical and scientific disciplines, but also humanities, 63,000 students, and we have a large number of laboratories and research infrastructures, among those a number of pilot lines. So this is just for you to give you an idea. So if you can move to the next slide. Just to give you an idea, Padova is located 20 minutes by train to Venice. That is maybe familiar with all of you. And it is a heavily industrialized area, one of the top industrial area in Italy, together with Emilia-Romagna and Lombardy and Piedmont. And it is among the different regions the one which has a lot of more contribution to the employment in terms of SME. So let's say that the industrial area here is highly characterized by very dynamic and international SMEs. If you can go to the next one. What we do in Unismart is basically work around four main drivers for SME and industry to get engaged with a large university. First of all, access to network, which of course is related to the scientific activities of the university. Access to finance, because normally the collaboration industry-university is also characterized by the possibility to access finance, in particular at local scale. Access to market, because of course there are important multiplier effect by collaborating with such a large and international university. But most of all, access to research infrastructures, technology and competencies, among those, as I said, a number of pilot lines. If you go to the next slide. What we do in Unismart, I think that we can be defined as a proactive interface. So we are in between. We talk business to businessmen, and science to scientist. So basically, we are a sort of translator engaging among the two communities. You can go to the next slide. So we basically do a number of activities. First of all, we have exclusivity for the commercialization of the patent portfolio. I'm talking about 200 and more patents available from our university. We do innovation consulting, which is the typical activity which allows to create the trust and the typical client relationship with companies, in particular SMEs. I'm talking about small projects which engage industry and SMEs in developing road mapping activities to identify opportunities for them to be further developed. And this moves into contract research, which normally is scaling up the size of the project to go to the proof of concept, to go to prototyping, and to try to secure the IP which is needed to move freely in the next level, which is normally collaborative research. And when I'm talking about collaborative research, I'm talking about Horizon 2020, but also national and regional initiatives related to the smart specialization strategy, but also schemes that this university has launched in order to allow collaboration between scientists and 2 or 3 companies, normally SMEs. So a number of different instruments which can be used. But above all, I like to highlight here the fact that Unismart, thanks to this attractive portfolio of competencies and infrastructures, has created a community in the last few months, which consists today, if you move to the next slide, I mean, of a large amount of organizations. What we do, we basically move in a 3D space, as I say. Basically, we try to help scientists to mobilize their research output and then to transform them in commercialized results, taking into account the multiplying effect that can come up from the investor side in order to leverage and multiply the opportunity. So we move from the typical 2D dimension, which is licensing, consulting, and contract research, as I said, to the 3D dimension, which is collaborative research and the launch of spin-off startups where public or private investments can multiply and leverage the effect. If you go to the next one, you have here the operational model for Unismart, which is, as I said, in between. So we try to combine the freedom of research that is typical of the science side with the freedom to operate in the market, which is typical of the entrepreneur, especially the small-sized companies. And then we create a bridge between this community of players and the different departments, where we identify champions, which are normally proactive in working with industry and excellent by definition as for all the researchers. And then we liaise with all the university offices, which consist of the Technology Transfer Office, the International Research Office, the Career and Stage Office, which allow students to find opportunity outside. And also we try to leverage on the Alumni Association, which is helping us to connect to experienced professionals which are outside in the market. And this university is about 250,000, the latest number I know, of people which cover important position worldwide and coming from this university. If you move to the next slide, this is the typical mechanism of collaboration, which is also in line with the project, the Light Coach project that is coordinated by the University of Athens and mobilized together with Axia, that is basically helping SME to connect to the pilot lines, to the research infrastructure, by allowing a single entity to have a contractual relationship with industry and SMEs, and then to subcontract work, in our case, to the different departments, so that we have a key account approach, and also we have a good control on the contractual side, IP side, confidential side, allowing the researchers and the owner of the pilots to collaborate straight with the entrepreneurs. So we do not avoid, we are not creating a Chinese wall, but we are simply facilitating the mechanism, the business development mechanism, and also the project management mechanism. So we are not typically charging something to our researchers that, as typically in the university landscape, are already charged by the university and the department to support with the overhead. But we basically ask the customer to accept a small extra cost in order to have a professional management approach to run smoothly the project. This is, I think, quite in line with the Open Innovation Testbed, because in our case, most of the projects we are running are multidisciplinary. So if a company would engage two different departments from our university, they should sign two different contracts. In our case, they only sign one, and then we subcontract the two departments, simplifying the interface with the industry on the contractual side. If you can move to the next slide. This is an overview of the community. I do believe we still miss a few logos that entered the community last week, but this gives you an idea of the 60 plus organizations that are paying a fee to Unismart to have a fast track into our university. And this model is exactly what we proposed in the Open Innovation Testbed. So you have here large players. I'm talking about Aon, Lloyds, I'm talking about Novamont, I'm talking about SAES. There are champions from our region, but also entities, as I said, from outside the country and also Europeans. Then we have the two largest banks, UniCredit and Intesa Sanpaolo. We have a venture capital fund. We have a municipality. I mean, it's a very dynamic community which exchange opportunity among themselves and then activate the university whenever it is needed. And this concerns competencies, but also access to pilot lines and research infrastructures. If you can go to the next slide. Another dimension that I think is strictly connected with our activity, and I think it's a plus, especially for SMEs getting engaged in an Open Innovation Testbed, is the international dimension. I think it's very powerful to exploit the network that, in our case, as Unismart, our university can put, can make available. But also, if we consider pilot lines and bigger TOs or industry, which are responsible for those, normally they are quite well internationalized. So this dimension, I think, is very interesting and important as a side effect, but very important in terms of impact. In our case, we are currently working in several countries in Europe, as I said, but also in a few projects worldwide. If you move to the next slide. So basically, just to give you an idea, this company was launched in 2017. We are doing break-even this year, simply with contracts coming from outside. So the university only put 250K as a capital to launch the activities and to pay for the salary for last year. But this year we are profitable and we can deliver back value to the university. We have closed 3 license agreements for over 1.2 million euro overall, which, as I've been told, is quite well above the 25K, which is the average, at least in Italy, in terms of patent licensing from a university. We have been gathering a portfolio of projects above 2 million euro. I'm talking about industrial contracts, mainly from SMEs, which are engaging more than half of the 32 university departments, including those dealing with humanities, which as an engineer, I thought would have been a little bit more difficult to engage with SMEs. And then we have contributed to help companies from our community and our researchers to mobilize 5 successful European projects. And then as a side effect, we have been in contact with many organizations. So I think that this could be an example on how, if you have excellent competencies, researchers, but also infrastructures, you can make the business model sustainable. And this was the starting point, actually, for us to get invited in the project Life Coach, which is currently under negotiation within the Open Innovation Testbed, within the unit of Mrs. Hélène. The next slide, please. So this is already covered, so you can go to the next one. So this is my last slide. I just wanted to draw some conclusion, which I think could also open elements for discussion complemented by the presentation by the Commission. Let's say that what has been done in the project we have been involved is to extend the business model I presented you within the Open Innovation Testbed mechanism to guarantee open access through a single entity, which also include access to different funding schemes and mechanisms to guarantee proper coverage of the overall TRL line. The Open Innovation Testbed, in line with what I showed, present a full range of services, which are very helpful in terms of activities themselves, but also in terms of scalability of the cost from few K upward to 100K and more to follow the development of products and services, including all the non-technological aspects or aspects which are more horizontal, like standardization, characterization activities, modeling. Of course, we are talking about nanotechnology and material, and then the whole innovation management associated activities. We have developed in Unismart, and is part of the Open Innovation Testbed project, an harmonized strategy for the management of IP, confidentiality, contractual matters, when you're working with multiple research groups in our case, which can be the case also for an Open Innovation Testbed. We have established in Unismart and proposed within the Open Innovation Testbed a flexible and fair pricing policy, which takes into account also the willingness to pay from the customer point of view, depending on its size, and also business offer that we can think of implementing. And as I said, we have deployed this financially sustainable business model, which is based on different legs and revenue streams, which allows investment generated, the profit generated to be invested back in facility upgrades and maintenance with respect to the teams, in our case, that has been much contributed to the work we are doing as an interface in the middle between industry and research infrastructure and pilots. So I think that this is, from my point of view, what I wanted to give you as a concrete example of what we are doing and how this is fitting within the framework of the Open Innovation Testbed through the project that we are currently negotiating, coordinated by the University of Athens. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Stefano. Thank you for your presentation. This was exactly what we wanted to hear from you, an example of the business model, of how to ensure the sustainability of these infrastructures, because this is really the new thing, or the new characteristic of this kind of calls. We have seen that Elaine has arrived, but we have lost her. So let me just ask you one question while we are waiting to establish again the connection with Elena. So University of Padova has already this business model. I'm sure other research centers have another business models. So how do you do it at the European network? Will you manage to have the different business models from the different test beds, or you presented some kind of common services or common contracts, or so the clients have some common things when accessing to this European network?
Well, let's say that we have integrated in the project, in the proposal, the approach as far as the first contact services with the customer. So what I said is called in my presentation innovation consulting, normally a small-scale project which help creating the trust between an SME, which is used to work very rarely with a large research infrastructure like a university, which is seen very far from them. And this is also amplified by the fact that when we talk about Open Innovation Testbed in Horizon 2020, we are talking about getting engaged with pilots which are owned by entities, organizations, industries which are far away. So this matter of the trust is even more important. So this is the mechanism we have easily integrated into the proposal that NTUA is coordinating. As far as the mechanism for getting access to the pilot lines through the single entity, this is matching the contractual aspects and business model that also the different owner of the pilots are using, but try to simplify them, try to identify all the commonalities and try to leave open all the specific constraints that sometimes exist according to the national regulations as well. We are talking about some public organizations, so there are strict regulations which give instruction and guidance on how to run such kind of research facilities. But in general terms, we moved mainly in the contact layer with business, try to help them in getting access to services that create the trust, and then open the possibility to scale up till the use of the pilots and all the surrounding services.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. We will have to wait a little bit longer for Hélène.
I think Hélène is connected, but her camera is disconnected.
Okay, so we will try to... Hélène, if you can hear us.
Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but we cannot see you.
Okay, we have obviously a problem. I don't know what it is. The technician is trying to solve something from distance. All the electricity has disappeared, so you cannot see me neither because of the camera, because we are in the black.
Okay.
In the darkness.
This is what happens when we do live events.
But so...
And I don't hear you very well, so could you speak a little bit louder?
Of course, Hélène. So first of all, I would like to thank you for being here. Although we cannot see you, but we can hear you. That's something. As I'm aware, will you give some presentation? Will you give some indications of the main characteristics, or you want to go directly to the questions and answers?
I want to go directly to the questions. Ah, bonjour monsieur.
Il n'y a pas de lumière.
Il n'y a pas de lumière et voilà. Et ils peuvent pas me voir, mais ils peuvent m'entendre. Et j'ai touché à rien, je me aussi.
So maybe, Hélène, can I suggest something?
So maybe I would go to the questions.
Okay, but maybe we could, we changed a little bit the agenda. We were doing the presentation of Stefano, and we are doing the questions and answers together. So you will be replying and giving your opinion to the questions, okay? Is that okay for you?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so let's start with the questions and answers. I would ask to appear on the screen. I will read the question, and then I will ask you for your answers, okay? So,
okay.
The first question I have here is how to deal with conflict of interest for open testbed regarding showcases developed with users inside the project and open calls developed for external applicants. Who wants to go first? Ladies first, Hélène?
The first thing is I'm a bit lost with the definition, with this wording of open calls.
Okay, so
I don't really anticipate. You hear me?
Yes, I hear you, and I think this is when, in order to the infrastructure or the testbed to be sustainable, they have to sell their services to users outside the project.
Yeah. Okay. The system we are foreseeing is not really that they do a call, but they go to an IT platform that we are working for Digit and Grow to create that type of platform. So it will not be them doing an open call, but entering in a platform and doing it through the platform. That's the first point. Then your question, yeah, we know this question is very legitimate. It means that you have SMEs inside the consortium which will do the demonstration cases. And in the same time, some testbed would like to have some customers coming from the outside, not being member of the consortium, but benefiting from the same services. I think what the issue of conflict of interest will arise only if these two categories are not treated the same way.
Okay.
So if the testbed is favoring the entities in its consortium. Now, the answer is a bit different from the question. In the consortium, we consider that as it is building a testbed, it could include, the consortium could include SMEs to demonstrate. But when the testbed will be operational, when the project is finished, then these customers should not be in the testbed. They are here to do the demonstration. They're not here to provide with a service. So at the end of the project, we go to a normal situation where in the consortium, you have the entities providing the service, and outside, as customers, the entities asking for a service. The issue comes when you try to do both together, let's say 1 or 2 years before the end of the project.
Yes.
And this is not supposed to happen. That's why we allowed in the consortium to have entities being customers to demonstrate, but not to already go for outside customers without being in the consortium.
Okay.
Otherwise, indeed, you create a discrimination, or you are at risk to create a discrimination. So we should distinguish between the two phases during the project when you are still testing the testbeds and after, when the testbed begins to run.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Well, Stefano, did you have this kind of doubt when preparing the proposal, or what is your project? How is your project addressing this issue?
Well, I think it's very much in line with what Helen was saying, as in the fact that those companies which are participating in the project as clients or users are helping fine-tuning and scaling and adjusting the pilot lines based on their project requirements. But then in the second part of the project, there is an open access with the call through a platform, as Helen was saying. And I think that it is important, of course, to guarantee the self-sustainability of the initiative as such, of the Open Innovation Testbed, because normally what we are experiencing in Unismart, working with some promising and interesting pilot lines from our university, is that when you create expectations in a market through a good business development approach, then you miss capacity. So you introduce the problem of the difficulty in delivering what the market is asking for. So the possibility to have income that could be reinjected in the Open Innovation Testbed as a legal entity is that you can maybe help maybe doubling or multiplying the infrastructure in order to have the possibility to work with more clients. I think that this is also the problem. So when we're talking about conflict of interest, I don't know whether this is associated with the idea launched, but also the capacity is an issue. This is from our practical experience.
Thank you. The next question is...
I would say that...
Yes, please.
Sorry, I would say also in addition that the testbeds, when they are running inside the project itself, so before being operational, they are not supposed to make benefits. So the pricing, let's say, even if they price a part of the service to the demonstration customers which are in the consortium, it should not be with a benefit, or it should not even be with an amortizing the investment. It should really be just to operate inside a consortium, and this should have been ruled by the consortium agreement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, still competitive, of course.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, what kind of business model is common in this kind of open hub? Call options, equity, royalties, direct fee for the scaling up. Do you have an idea, Elaine? This is completely open, but do you have some suggestions?
Well, the first thing I would say is negative, is we do not want to have cascading grants. That should be very clear, because cascading grants are are rational when you want to develop one specific technology, like digital. But in our case, we work for all the technologies. So in order to be technology neutral, we do not want to capture a market to orient it towards the technology of the testbed. So that's a negative point. On the positive side, what we really wish to do is that the testbed establish their own sustainability model, and this should be done even at the stage of the proposal. You can still change during the project, because of course it's never foreseeable at 100%. But one of the big questions they have to check first is, are they going to cover all the costs? I mean, usually you have the operating costs, and you have the maintaining costs, and you have the investment. We are not sure, honestly, sincerely, that the benefits from the first years could cover the investment. At least they should cover the operating and possibly the maintenance. But we are currently looking with the program on innovation to see whether there could be a help to the SMEs. One thing which will cost is that the testbeds have to define the needs of the user, because most of the users come without being prepared. And this is what is behind the sustainability model in a way. Are they going to cover the analysis of the needs of the potential customer? Because this costs a lot, it needs specific people. It's not only providing the service, during the service, adjusting and so on, it's also before. This is covered by the cascading grants in the digital innovation hubs, but we did not put a system for that. So that's the first question. Before any business model, that should be taken on board. Not that they bring a solution, but the proposal is aware of that. And how then it will allocate its cost between the investment, the maintenance, and the operational cost. But at minima, they should cover the operational cost at the end of the project. And then they should generate a margin to cover the investment. So in a way, the business model, I don't really care on what business model. It should just be understandable and rational. I mean, it should be self-explanatory. It should really, if someone tells the evaluator, we will manage to get that, no one will believe. You need to evidence it. So the business model, whatever it will need to be evidenced. And maybe there will be business models that we did not anticipate. As long as they are rational and feasible, why not?
For sure. And Stefano, what was your experience within the project?
Well, the project is currently under negotiation, so it would be premature to talk about the experience from the project. What I can say is that, in line with what Ellen was saying, it's not a business that you can sell only using the platform. The platform, in our case, is a way to attract interest and to showcase the possibilities. But indeed, you need an interface which is technically capable of interacting with the user and help them defining the proper specification to scale up and be a product, a service through the pilot. And this is something that has to be self-sustainable. I mean, without any, as Ellen said, cascade funding on similar mechanisms. So it has to be built within the business model. And this is what we do actually in Unismart with, our people are basically project manager covering different disciplines in order to interact with the customer in line with the infrastructure and pilots we are going to propose. And this is exactly what we have shaped within the project we have been submitted and currently negotiating.
Thank you. Can I pass to the next question? So the next question
Yeah.
will be, what are the activities within the project in order to prove the sustainability of the test bed, and moreover, a turnover of 60 million during the first 5 years after the end of the project?
I'm not sure I understand. What is the...
I think this is an expected impact listed on the call topics, that in the first 5 years after the end of the project, the test bed should prove that we'll have a turnover, moreover, of 60 million euros. Stefano.
Yeah, we didn't want to put the test beds as profitable. This is not the aim of the exercise, but they should make profit in order to cover reinvestment or at least upgrading. And moreover, the profit will come from attracting a lot of customers. So the idea is to boost the fact that it's not reserved to a certain elite or the closed enterprises around the test bed, but it's better. But that it could attract a lot of customers. They are more, I don't like the expression, but they are more a supermarket of services with a high quality.
Mm-hmm.
A fine roast is a large quantity, let's say. So the idea is not really impose them a sustainability which is enormous, but to impose them that they can quickly attract enough customers.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And not lay down for 10 years till their equipment is degraded and we need a large investment.
For sure, yeah. That's a concern you have to take into account.
Mm-hmm.
What was the approach taken in your project, Stefano?
Well, I think that in line with what Ellen is saying, it's a mix between the business model for the overall open innovation test bed and the business model of each single pilot lines. The idea is not to go for a huge amount of activities, but rather to go for high quality services and projects which can then generate impact in line with maybe figures that are in line with what you said. In our case, if I don't mistake, it's in that order of magnitude, 50 million euros, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, because in your presentation, Stefano, you really showed there is an ecosystem around the test bed, right? So that can really help showing that it will be sustainable in the future.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of the community, from my point of view, is very important, provided, of course, the fact that it has to be open to companies and organizations outside the community, which is our case. But engaging a small community guarantee you a sort of reference market that you can count on, that you can deliver maybe local services to keep them in line with the possibility to upgrade projects later on through the pilots. But again, it has to be open, as in our case, and it is the case for the project.
Thank you.
But one thing which I face, I feel a little bit, I didn't see the proposals and I'm not allowed to look on the evaluation. That has to be clear. Well, I see my photo now. It's
an alternative that we found.
I love technique. I mean, okay. One thing which maybe I have noticed is a certain lack or a low understanding on why we put regulatory. Regulatory is linked to the conditions to access the European market. So nothing prevents a test bed, and on the contrary, it will be very positive to attract foreign customers which want a kind of pre-certification in developing their product in order to have an easier access, regulatory speaking, to the European market. Sorry?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So this regulatory compliance, it's not a joker, it's a masterpiece, because it will most likely help attracting outside customers. If you go to a test bed in Europe, you can test, you will automatically also develop your product, be helped to develop your product in compliance with European regulations, which renders easy to access, in addition to quality. I mean, I usually take the same example because I have kids. I take the example of a teddy bear. And a teddy bear could be, you are going to sell millions of it on the market if you ensure that you can wash it 100 times without taking out the softness of the cloth. But to be able to, this is a quality standard, but to be able to sell it on the European market, you need not to have any kid being able to take out the eyes of the teddy bear. And this is a regulatory constraint. And very often the structures we see, they develop quality standards, but they pay not enough attention to regulatory. And regulatory is a pre-certification, because if at the end the test beds can manage to deliver this pre-regulatory check, then it's easier for the member states also to certify products. But this is in the next future, but that's why regulatory is so important. It is linked to internal market.
Thank you for that clear indication. That it's indeed important to take into account. Another question is, how can we address the confidentiality issues for industrial demonstrators on the open test beds?
I would say that the demonstration phase is not exclusively on the technicalities. It is also on the way that we implement, indeed, the access conditions and the regulatory checks and things like that. And in the relationship between customers and providers of service, the question of IPR is critical. It's not only data confidentiality, it's also intellectual property rights and all the legal constraints. That's why the demonstration phase is also aiming at testing how this type of relations should work. If you accept to demonstrate, you take a risk, that's clear. In a way, you will have for free a service that otherwise you will pay. So it's interesting for you, but you take a risk. So maybe some test beds will discover that the way they wanted to manage IPR or the way they were planning is not satisfactory for their customers. Or in the reverse way, they will discover that the way they take the IPR on the process is not enough to allow them to develop, all that type of things. But demonstration will be also on the relationship and access. It's not only on the technical phase.
Okay. Stefano?
I share the point of view. I think it's about maybe harmonizing the practice that are currently used by the owner of the pilots, and also developing this layer of services that help to engage companies developing maybe the proper plan and refining the ideas, the concept, in order to allow maybe the patenting activities before they are deployed. So again, IP, access condition in terms of contract, benchmarking, confidentiality. I think that in our project, it will be reviewed at the beginning, fine-tune using the demonstration activities, and then taken in the second part of the project as an area to be used for the open calls through the platform.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
The next question is, what is the best balance in terms of budget distribution between technical improvement, facility upgrade, and business development? What is your opinion on this one?
Yeah, it's strange that the question comes from Fraunhofer, because I just had a cluster meeting last week where they were present, having been selected for one test bed within a consortium, let's say. I made it very clear that the aim of the testbed is to provide service to boost innovation. It's not transfer technology. Transfer of technologies is an additional, let's say, gain, but it's not the main aim. The main aim is to create a network, but not to create it from scratch. I mean, to assembly and fill in the gaps for a network which will serve all the industry. It's not research. It's purely support to innovation. So the relationship between the three components, there is no real things which is decided in advance. But if a testbed is focusing only on boosting a specific technology because this is a technology which is supported by a member state or by a region or by somewhere, no, it will not be a testbed. But if it is a testbed which is taking the opportunity of having a lot of skills and knowledge in this region to develop these skills or this knowledge, this capacity into a testbed which will attract service entities outside of the region, then it is a very well-designed testbed.
Okay, thank you, Hélène. That is a clear indication on what the aim of the testbed is. Stefano, did you have this in mind when submitting the proposal?
Well, I was not coordinating the activities. I only proposed a few approaches. What I can confirm in line with what Hélène is saying is that as for Unismart, my entity, there are already well-established mechanisms locally to engage industry with researchers and pilots. I think that the added value is to multiply opportunity outside. As I showed in our community, we have a lot of companies coming from abroad. So I think that the added value of our initiative and also our involvement in Open Innovation Testbed is, as Hélène said, to attract customers from outside, to create an ecosystem, valuing the access to the pilots as a way to develop new products and to generate impact.
Okay, thank you.
May I add also a word? May I ask a question to Stefano? When you prepared the project, did you go to the website and read the guidelines on access?
Yes, definitely, quite a lot.
Because this is specified in it as a guideline that we need contractual, at least when the testbed will be operating, we need contractual relationship between the service provider and the customer, and not only a kind of contract when you get an advice. Here there is a commitment which has a legal value.
Yeah.
Okay, you can also put questions to each other. That's not problem. Oh, the light is back. Perfect.
You see me now?
We see you now. I would just like to ask if you could zoom a little bit so we can see you better.
That's too much for me.
That's fine, okay.
No, don't ask me, I'm no technician. It's not my office, I am no technician.
Okay, no problem,
No,
Hélène.
I'm afraid I can't. I don't know how to do it.
Okay.
What I can say is the guidelines prepared by the Commission are very useful, as Hélène said. So I think it's a very good piece of work to read to get the instruction for the preparation of these parts.
Yes, for sure. Sure.
And we have also, there were many questions at the beginning, so the answers to the questions are put on our website too. So it's always good to look on FAQ, frequently asked questions.
Yes, indeed. And from this webinar, we are also going to issue a fax on these questions, and we'll share it with the European Commission to put it in the website, and we will also put it on the project website. The next questions, I think, are more for Hélène, but if you want to add or comment, Stefano, please do so. So the next question will be, could you please clarify the definition of single entry point and its role?
Oui, the single entry point. It has been a quite memorable fight internally, even in my unit, I have to say. And it's still not finished. So the single entry point, as we understand it as a legal single entry point. I think it should be seen like that. So what it means is that there is one contract, one responsibility, which is covering all the services provided by the testbed. Even if you have, for instance, suppose that you have a first some premises in Portugal, and because there are very few specialized systems like that in Europe, you buy a part of the service to the clinical testing which are made in France, in Grenoble, and then you buy also something else to Germany. The customer should have only one relationship. So one of these three will be responsible, which means internal agreements with legal value between the members of the testbed. These internal agreements could be long-term or temporary. So the single entry point is the idea that as a customer, I have only one contact, not one technical contact, but also one full service contact.
Okay.
And I will not have to contest in France about CEA or in Germany about Fraunhofer. I will only contest to my entry point.
I think this is clear. Was this difficult to achieve, Stefano? These internal arrangements, these internal...
Not really. I think that it helps in terms of a key account when you are getting out to companies and to better coordinate the activities. It's a way to consolidate a little bit the economics and the performance within a single entity. And I mean, we have been working out a lot with the guidelines of the Commission and come up also with some, I think, innovative ideas on how to properly manage that in terms of practicalities, having into account the different owners of the pilots and the key players in the consortium which are supposed to be involved in the legal entity.
Now, may I draw the attention on a frequent mistake, let's say, which is to confuse the single entry point as we understand it with the single, let's say, finding point. You can have, a lot of SMEs or small entities, they cannot by themselves go to an IT tool and find the right premise. They will need help. And they will also need help in their own language, for instance. So we will need a first level system which is flexible, which is just helping to get access. And then this is not a single entry point, but this is an entry point at the local level. And we are currently looking, for instance, with GROW, with Enterprise Europe Network, or with people like that, on how we could do this system. But then, if you are decided and you see what you can gain, you go to select some testbed. And in that, you will have a single entry point for the testbed itself, which is a legal meaning and financial meaning. So there is frequently confusion between both. What we call the single entry point is the second one, the responsible people for providing you the whole service through the testbed association.
Yes. Okay, so there is an access or exceeding, helping, supporting, finding the information, that's one, and that's not the single entry point.
Yeah.
The single entry point is related with the services that are supplied by the testbed network. Yeah. Thank you for that remark. Thank you for that remark, Elaine. The next question is, how will relations between testbeds and topics from Area 1.2 of NMB program, material characterization and computational modeling, be established?
Yeah, as if these topics on characterization or modeling, if they are developing characterization methods or working on characterization as a whole, then there is no more link that for any industry to look on new characterization methods through the European Materials Characterization Council. The same for modeling. But if you create a platform where you exchange models and translators for modeling, then the test bed could see it as a reservoir, as a resource, where they could pick up or attract for offering the right range of services to their customers. So a characterization center could very well be a member of a test bed. It could also be not a full-time member, but for some part of the time it has an agreement to characterize a certain type of materials. The same for modeling.
Okay. Any comments, Stefano?
Well, this is the experience we we have in the proposal that we are currently negotiating according to the modeling and characterization activities and involvement of the providers in the legal entity with some contractual arrangements.
Okay, okay. So the last question is, oh no, sorry, we have two more. One is about how could the Academy participation be evaluated in testbed projects? I think they are referring to universities.
Mm-hmm. I saw this question and I was a bit perplexed because raising this question is in a way showing, and I'm sorry to say it, that they did not understand the logic of testbeds. Because I don't care. We don't care where it comes from as long as the service is the right one. So there is no plus or minus on an academy. If the academy has a structure which could be integrated in a test bed for providing some value chain service, fair enough. If it does not, fair enough too. The question for me is simply not relevant. It's not a criteria.
It doesn't matter the type of organization, it's the service they provide, right?
No. Yes, yes. And in some cases, universities have very well developed structures. In some other cases, they have very specific structures which could be, for instance, useful to a test bed for 10% of their activities, but it will be up to the test bed to find the right structure. And if it is in an academy, or if it is in an institute, or if it is in another industry or in an RTO, this is not relevant. For us, this is not a criteria at all, neither positive or negative.
Okay, thank you. And last question, could the mechanism for accepting money from companies into the SEP before the project ends be explained? I think this is, you have already answered this one. This is not supposed to happen, right, Elaine?
Yeah, when you are in the demonstration project, in the demonstration phase of the project, you're not supposed to see your demonstrator as customers. You can look with them on what type of money they will pay for that service. This is what is demonstration. You can look on them, for instance, on whether they would be happy if they pay less and it takes more time. This is just a stupid example. This type of thing you check. But you're not supposed to already sell your services to the demonstrators. This is a demonstration phase. That's why they are in the consortium.
Okay.
Now, if you want to do it, it's a consortium agreement. But if you are in a demonstration, you're not supposed to have already external customer. What you can do is to achieve the demonstration project and begin to run your test bed. That's not a problem, but not together.
Okay, because I'm just thinking now, if there are some infrastructures that are more advanced than others, they can start running, and you have others still that are in the upgrading or in the demonstration phase, and the process is still ongoing. So there will be some, not a problem.
No, because you have one test, suppose that you have one test bed, which has been quicker and is specialized in one domain, and has finished. Its demonstration is done, they want to jump into the swimming pool and they want to be really operational. Mm-hmm. So they stop the demonstration. Most likely, in that case, the demonstrator, being SMEs, being customers, would leave the consortium because they are not providing a service no longer. Mm-hmm. And then they open to customers and they can test with outside customers.
Okay.
but they cannot keep their first demonstrator and give them a privileged treatment. Of course not.
Okay, okay. I think that is clear now. So thank you both for replying to these questions. I'm now going to ask Sophia if we have received any live questions from the participants that are watching us, and also ask to Anna and Andres that are here in the studio if they have questions to just come here and ask them. Sophia.
Yes, we receive 4 questions, and I believe 2 are more targeted for Stefano and the other 2 more to Hélène. So I will start with the ones to addressing Stefano. The first one is, how do you deal with the liability of the work delivered by research organizations and universities? Who is responsible for the quality of the work?
Well, let's say that in our case, I can refer to the experience of Unismart because it's exactly about this issue. Unismart, as a legal entity, has a responsibility for delivering the quality. So we have an internal agreement with the university, which is also covering this aspect. And in the test bed, our suggestion would be to take this in consideration together with ITR and so on, to benchmark best practices that all the different owners of the pilots are using, and to come up with an harmonized framework wherever possible.
Okay, thank you, Stefano. Do you want to comment on this, Hélène?
No, it's okay.
The second one is, how do you reach the SMEs, Stefano? Do you have specific strategies for dissemination? How do you assign workload between departments and units, I believe inside of the university? Could this cause problems when having similar expertise?
Well, I don't know whether actually we should discuss about the business model of Unismart in detail rather than on the Open Innovation Test Bed. But I mean, my references are clear and shown in my presentation. In terms of arranging the distribution of the work, as I said, maybe it was not clear enough. In our Unismart business model, we have a unique contract with the customer, and we subcontract the different research groups. That could be departments, could be interdisciplinary research centers, and all the different structures of the university. And the idea was to replicate this approach also within the Open Innovation Test, so through the legal entity, to place contracts to the different owners of the Open Innovation Test Bed, trying to have, as far as possible, as I said, an harmonized contractual framework, which of course has to be customized case by case, depending on legal requirements at the level of maybe the member state where the pilot line is based, simply because if they are publicly owned, there are maybe some constraints that has to be carefully looked into at the beginning of the project.
Okay, thank you, Stefan. And now for Hélène, one of the questions was asked during your reply to a previous one. And the question is, Hélène, does it mean that an SME cannot be a pilot line owner?
No, it doesn't mean that. It means that the demonstration, okay, I need to refine a little bit. When we go to the demonstration phase, you have to demonstrate that you can provide a service, that you can provide at the right price, which is attractive but covers your cost, and that you can provide it with the right level of quality, and that you can attract customers. So some SMEs could well be providing a service. For instance, an SME which has a long experience in regulatory for nanoparticles, for explosion or powders of nanoparticles, could be very useful to participate as a service provider. So the difference is if you are in the demonstration phase as a test customer, as a customer testing the system, then for me you should not be still in the consortium when the test phase is finishing and when the test bed is going to operate normally. But if you are an SME providing a service and you are testing your service during the demonstration phase, then of course you stay if you are relevant. The difference is, are you testing the service or are you providing a service? And the status of SME doesn't count on that. It's just the service which counts.
Okay, Ellen, I think it's clear now. And the last question is, are there lessons learned from the test beds funded in 2018 call? Even if they have not started yet, but are there any changes in the expectations on behalf of the European Commission?
Not really. I've made lessons drawn, let's say. I would say it's a bit too early because the contracts are not signed, so it's difficult, but I can already maybe give two big hints. The first one, and that's why I'm so happy we can do it today, is that there is a need for more explanations. We see some countries better placed than others, and clearly, we cannot go to the 28 countries, that's clear, it's simply not possible. But we need an effort to explain. And again, I'm very happy that you organized that today. And the second thing is that most of the proposals which failed, not all, but in some calls, most of them, they did not work properly on sustainability. They considered still that it was a research program or research action. They explained that they will attract experts in that domain and so on, and that was not right. There is a change of concept. So both things are linked. Then, of course, the last point, but it's aside, is that we don't have enough money, clearly. It's just an experiment, because we cannot build a network with this amount of money. It will need billions. That's what we are trying to do in the next step, which are the technology infrastructure. But we want to show that it works and that the concept is reproduced, whether it's by regions, by member states, or by industry itself. We just want to show that the concept can work.
Thank you, Elaine. It's clear now. And Marta, I don't have any more questions from the chat. Thank you for the participants who have posed these ones.
Okay. Actually, I would like to say that for this reason, we had some comments from participants that they saw their proposal not being selected for funding. And that is why we invited Stefano, because we all see the change in the concept, and this would be to help them in learning or having some information or some suggestions about innovation model, what was presented by Stefano. And we hope that this information will help proposers to do better proposals and to have more sustainable models. I thank you again for your participation. I think it was a very clear information that you gave here today. I would like to ask you, before we close this event, if you have one last message to give to the participants, the ones who are applying for the next calls, and also to the ones that will be users of these services. Who wants to go first?
Stefano, go.
What was our case is that I think it's very important to take into account the users being SMEs. So I think the creation of the trust to access such relevant infrastructure is, from my point of view, the key point that we paid a lot of attention to, because we have potentially a lot of customers, but the engagement mechanism has to be concrete, has to be based on trust, and has to be scalable starting from small investment for the beginning of the service, then to the access to the infrastructure, which would be more expensive, even if it is at a fair price, of course. And I'm talking about after the end of the project.
Okay. Hélène?
If I have one piece of advice to give to the potential proposers, is to read the topic and the introduction. Don't forget the introduction, with innocent eyes, not trying to link to what you did before or what you understood before, because it's a new concept.
Okay.
I fully agree.
Okay. With this last message, this is a new concept. We need new approaches. We say goodbye. We remind you all that the information regarding this virtual event for clients are on the NMP team website. From today's event and from all the others that we have already organized. These ones are always related with Horizon 2020 and nanotechnologies, advanced materials, and advanced manufacturing and processing. You will be receiving an email when this video and facts and presentations will be available on the website. Sophia, do you want to say any last message?
Just good luck to the proposers, and if you need something, either from us or other colleagues, just drop us an email and we'll be glad to help you all.
For sure, the NCPs exist to help you use our support. That's all from our side. Have a nice day.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.